Hello and welcome to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dillon. I'm your host, joined by my blue collar badass, Matt. How's it going, man?
Doing great, Dylan. So you kind of screwed me up, dude. I started listening to you. I took some of your advice and decided I was going to move my whole studio around. And like I was mentioning before, it's like when you get in your car and somebody else has been driving it and like they play with all the electronics, your seat's all jacked up, nothing fits. I'm like lost here. I feel like I'm in somebody else's office, even though I'm looking right at where I used to sit. But again, we're back to first world problems, man. Everything's good.
It's funny how like 3 feet can screw you up, or like make a world of difference, right?
It's like a whole new place. It's insane.
Uh, all right, man. Well, without further ado, since life's good on my end too, or no crazy weather, nothing to complain about, and even if I did, it wouldn't really matter for you guys. Like we're here, we're recording, and we've, as you can all read by the title of the show, we've got an awesome guest, Matt Graves, who's a seasoned construction project manager by trade, which is also how I introduce myself as an electrical engineer by trade. But after receiving a civil engineering degree from Texas A&M, he's currently a project manager by day, which we'll get into what his nighttime duties are here. Publishes a weekly construction curiosities newsletter and the CM Mentors podcast, which you all should go check that out, with the goal of helping the next generation of construction, which is exactly why we have Matt on here, because that's kind of our mission here at Construction Corner and everything that we talk about with the blue collar badass. So, Matt Graves, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, guys, for having me.
Absolutely.
So, I'll kick it off. Why did you? What made you choose civil engineering? And then I take it you're from Texas.
I am from Texas. I grew up in West Texas, in Midland, and I thought I was going to go to Texas Tech all the way through high school. And then I went to A&M, and I was like, I got to get out of town. So I went to College Station down to Texas A&M. I chose civil engineering because I had no clue what I was doing when I was 19 years old. And I thought I wanted to be a custom home builder. And I thought that was the path because I had no clue what I was doing. And I got halfway through engineering school and like, this sucks. I don't want to be an engineer. I don't want to be like cranking out calculations all day. I want to go build something. I want to do something. And so I realized I was looking at transferring, degrees, and that was going to set you back because you got to take some more classes, all that sort of stuff. So then I realized within civil engineering, you can specialize your last year, and you can special, geotech or structures or transportation, or they had, I don't know, 6 or 7 different things, and one of them was construction project management. So I kind of went down that rabbit hole, and you still take one of everything. I took one geotech class, one structures class, one kind of a one of everything, and then but your last year was all construction management type courses. You took one scheduling class, one buyout class, one plan reading class. A little bit of everything just to kind of get your feet wet. So to answer your question, why did civil engineering? Like, because I was a dumb 19-year-old kid and didn't know what I was doing.
Hey man, it's like of all the degrees, like again, as an engineer, like I think it puts you around like a really good group of people, right? You realize how smart people are out there. Like going to an engineering school, granted not as big as A&M, but you realize like there's a lot of real smart people that should probably just be left in a room to do their thing. Don't let them talk to people. But they're super smart, super good at what they do, and you need those people, right? And to be around them and having to interact with them on a daily basis, I think it allows you to bridge that gap between engineers and the rest of the construction world.
That's what I've found, just kind of from my background. Having kind of an engineering background and kind of knowing, at least some of the verbiage and terms and that sort of stuff. And then obviously, construction management too. There's a lot of people who are one side or the other, and I can kind of speak the language of whoever I'm talking to. So that's kind of been one of the skills I've been able to cultivate over the years. I kind of can speak to whoever I'm talking to, which has served me well.
Well, it's got to be huge, man. I mean, in the construction world, to have some at least rudimentary knowledge of geotech and structural and civil, all the different disciplines kind of in one, that's a good advantage over, the guy who just goes and gets a straight up quote unquote regular construction management degree, or the guy who gets a completely unrelated degree altogether.
Yeah, I mean, I probably forgot more than I learned, right? Because if you don't use it, you lose it. But
Yeah.
when you kind of get back into it, start reading the geotech report, and you're like, oh, okay, I remember all this, and kind of starts coming back to you. It's like riding a bike, you know. But no, it's been, I think having that base level of understanding of a lot of things is really been good for me.
So you started on the residential track. You said you're more commercial now, correct?
Oh, I've never actually worked in residential.
Okay. All right.
I thought that was what I wanted to do. When I got out of school and I graduated in 2010, and we were coming out of the recession, and you couldn't find work anywhere. So I got on with it was actually really cool, but it was a company that did vehicle barriers. Everything we did was like crash rated vehicle barriers for like military bases and FBI buildings, anything high security. And like any of the products we used were either one was engineered, but a lot of them were actually crash tested where they take a truck and run it into it and see if they could stop it or not.
That's awesome.
So I did that for a while, and so yeah, that was where the start was, and it was all federal contracting really because that's who needs all the high security stuff. So I got a baptism in the federal world early on.
That's cool.
So one thing I want to hit on there for all of our listeners is you got to remember like of how specialized you can get within this industry, right? Like you did one thing in, high security barriers, right? And even like stanchions that pop up out of the ground, you got to bury those things like 20 feet down, right? Like some of these other stationary barricades that don't move, right? They don't pop up, anything like that. But like that's super specialized, but it provides, probably a good chunk of jobs for people to do this one specialized thing. And I think, in the big wide world of construction, I think we sometimes lose that, right? We think of all the mechanical, like our regular contractors, and we forget about these super specialty contractors, versus like just MEP trades or drywall or framing, right? Or even carpenters, but these, very niche specialties that are within the construction world,
That's no, I've got a million ideas of things I want to do, and one of them was, and I'm never going to do it. So if any of the listeners actually do this and start this podcast, just give me a shout out and you can have it. But I want to start one that's called 1,000 Ways to Make It in the Construction Industry, because like, what does construction mean? Like you were just saying, it means everything. Most people think it's like a crane or it's a guy swinging a hammer, right? Like it's very stereotypical, but I mean, there's engineers, there's architects, there's finance, there's insurance, that are, all these all these other ancillary things that actually support the construction industry. It's such a massive. I went down a rabbit hole one day of it was actually for the newsletter, trying to figure out like how big is the construction industry, and it was kind of like, because if you Google it, I don't know how many billions of dollars, right? But like, what does that mean? And I think that's just cranes and people swinging hammers, really, right? It's just kind of tradesmen. But once you add in all the other stuff that goes to it, it's got to be massive.
Yeah. So when you look
huge.
at like BLS data, like commercial construction in the US is like, give or take in a year, $1 trillion, right? For commercial construction. And that's so not including any residential, which is all like apartments and multifamily and all that stuff. So that gets, excluded from it. So when you look at it, it goes to about $1 trillion in commercial, and then plus, financing. And then I don't know if within that $1 trillion that like BLS does, is like architecture, engineering fees, like all those other pieces on top of it. I think that's the actual like contract value of the building.
Right.
So then you would have to add, so CM fees would be included in that, but like A&E fees would not. So you add another 5% on top of that number, to which when you do it in trillion, right, 1.05, but that adds 50 billion to the bottom line of the number, right?
Well, even that, I work for an owner's rep company now, and so we're a whole nother, whole nother aspect of the thing. So,
well, yeah, and to your point, I mean, you've got the insurance guys who specialize in construction, you've got the legal folks who specialize in construction, all the vendors, all the suppliers. I mean, there's a ton of revolution around the whole industry as a whole, and we usually get into this later in the show, but you already brought it up. The value that we try and bring here through the show, through our podcast, is trying to intrigue and convince people of all of these different opportunities, in construction, right? And especially trying to get youth interested. We do a lot. I personally speak a ton at local high schools and different events, trying to, show these kids that you can get in construction. You don't have to be the guy in the ditch, right? You don't have to be the guy swinging the hammer. So I want to get your take on that. How do we attract young people to the industry? Because you're in it. You've been in it now for a hot minute. But what do you see down in Texas that what are these young people actually coming into the trades for, and how are you guys attracting them?
I think it's kind of like what you were just saying. I think it's like a grassroots movement, really. It's kind of getting in front of them early and showing them. I mean, my generation, I think really all of our generation was like, you either go to college or a failure. It was like those was the only option, right? And so I think really kind of showing them like there are, I mean, everyone says this. You go on LinkedIn, you go anywhere, everyone says it, but I think it's true. But I think a lot of people are saying you need to do it, but no one's really doing it. Very few, right? But I think it is changing that, just changing that stigma around the industry and really getting from early and showing them too. It's not being in the ditch. It's not swinging the hammer. Like, yeah, those suck. And that's really why I went to college, is because when I was in high school, I worked with my dad and I worked behind a backhoe and I was spotting for utilities behind the backhoe. And it was in Lubbock, Texas, and it was hot in the alleys and it was miserable. It was like, you can either do this your whole life or you can go get an education. And I was like, yeah, this sucks, man. I'm gonna go do that. And but showing people there is that job, right? Somebody has to do that job. There's always gonna be that job, but there's a lot of other really highly technical and specialized and really cool trades you can do. And technology is getting really involved in it now. And I mean, you can be a drone operator. You can be, all the little layout robots and all that. I mean, you got those. I mean, hell, doing Trimble, right? Doing BIM. I mean, there's so much when you really started looking at it. It's not your grandpa's old, swinging old rusty hammers really anymore.
And that's such a huge function of what we all have to do, right? You nailed it. It is still a grassroots movement because most people don't do shit about it. We've been complaining about it as an industry for as long as I can remember. As long as I've been in it, somebody's always been complaining, like, we're not getting youth in. There is no farm club. But I don't see anybody doing it, or not many people doing it. There are some of us who are doing things like this, and there's Steve Turner with, Bring Back the Trades, and there's various different groups, but they're all very grassroots, man. They're all very kind of sporadic, and we don't have a massive following on the show by any means, but if more people started trying and started pushing towards this, that's when we start making a difference, I think.
Like, I think people like Mike Rowe, like, I think he made a big stride but he got a lot of TV time, right? People knew he became a celebrity. Everybody in America knows who Mike Rowe is. Very few people know who we are, but we're trying to keep it going. And so I think it's going to take a lot of grassroots and a lot of kind of helping promote each other to kind of help lift each other up and try to keep the tide rising.
For the record, we put it out there, but Mike Rowe has an open invitation to the show.
He can come on
anytime he wants to come on. We'll help to it. When he comes on, we'll send him your way when we're done.
Perfect. I hope he comes, man. That's what it needs. It needs somebody like that to use their celebrity status to help keep lifting people up. So
yeah, and Mike does a great job of that too, and to promote what's going on. And I think the other thing too, again, being from the engineering side of the table, we're very closed off as a industry. Like, architects and engineers are very protective of the things that we end up working on, right? Because we are the tip of the spear in a lot of ways in getting that project up off the ground, helping them secure, whether that's land, and Matt, you are, because of the design build aspect that you do. But from a standpoint, we end up not talking about our clients. End up not talking about the projects that we're doing. We end up not talking about the difficulties we have, because we want to project this air of confidence around everything that we're doing. And I think that it doesn't help us in the way that we think it does, right? Like, it might for some of the starchitects, right? Like the HOKs, the Genslers of the world, but also they put out more content than everybody else too in the same breath. And so I think there's this balance that we've been more guarded, and I think, than open about the projects that we work on, the, challenges that we have. And somewhat in the contractor world as well. Like I've seen a few come out and start to talk about it, but again, it's the owners of companies, and the architects and engineers are very conservative in nature in that way of like, we'd rather not say anything because, and again, this is also goes to just the litigious nature of construction. And like, we'd rather not get sued for anything we might inadvertently say or whatever, especially for companies that do deal with a lot of like higher security, confidentiality. They can't talk that they worked on anything with anybody, type of deal, right? And so it doesn't do the industry services, but I think the more that we can talk in generalities about projects, like just like doctors talking about patients, it's, I had a patient that went, these are the symptoms, here's the solution, right? Here's all the stats, but we leave out their name, right? And that allows us to talk about it. And I think there's a lot that we can do with that. And it's, and not doing the whole rhymes with, Schmesh book and, whatever projects that we might have worked on, right? So I think talking about it, like you're doing, Matt, with your podcast, with a newsletter, with everything that you're putting out is the right thing to help educate people around it, and bring people into the trades, and just showing people that it is okay to like have open dialogue, like it's okay to have this type of communication around the construction industry. And Matt and I haven't been sued yet about anything that we've talked about, but granted, we own our own company, so it's
Not yet.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's a good segue into, let's talk about some of your content, because you're really good at it. First of all,
Thank you.
I've been following you for a while now on LinkedIn, especially. But I know, Dillon especially also wanted to get into your newsletter. So let's touch on that. What are you doing? What is Construction Curiosities, and what is Construction Yeti, and what's the difference?
One, I'm not a branding expert, so I'm kind of making it all up as I go, and I've got a lot of people get confused. So Construction Yeti was started as a blog. I started a couple of years ago, and then I got bored with the blog because it's kind of a SEO game and blah, blah, blah. That's another conversation for the day. So anyway, and COVID hit at the same time, so it kind of shut me down, and I just didn't put a lot of effort into it. And so then I decided I was going to start up this newsletter, and I started this last year. I started last June, and so I already had all the logo for Construction Yeti, and I frankly kind of liked it. So I just kind of rolled with that. So that was like the title of the Substack, is ConstructionYeti.substack, because you had to give it some brand name, really. And then the title, the Construction Curiosities, it's really, and I've had to evolve how I've been doing it, because I first wanted it to be a community, but I realized nobody on Substack wants to be part of my community. And so they love reading it, but then they want to talk about it on LinkedIn. And so, but the idea is, it's like, I'm always curious about something. Like in the construction industry, we're talking about how massive it is, right? It may have been some new project and it's got some new architectural finish that I've never heard of before. And I'm like, so I'm always Googling something, right? Or there's a new way to do this or a new way to do that. I mean, there's a dozen ways to skin the cat on anything in the industry. So I'm always Googling something or looking at YouTube. We're always trying to learn. And so it was kind of the idea behind it. Genesis was, it's just kind of whatever I'm curious about, like whatever I learned that week, whatever article I read. And so there's like 5 sections. One of them's always like, I'm going to try to teach you what I learned or I'm using or some observation I've had, is kind of the headline. And then usually there's an article that I found that week that's really interesting, maybe an interesting YouTube video I found, a quote, and there's always some sort of stupid meme I put in there every week. And I think people, if I just sent out memes, I think people would subscribe way faster, because I think that they get through all the bullshit just to get to the memes. I get more compliments on that than anything else, but I got to give some sort of value. So it's just kind of a potpourri of stuff. And so it's kind of why I kind of is the Construction Curiosities, because it's just whatever the hell's in my head that week. But I try to keep it on point and try to keep it, still trying to make it valuable and trying to kind of teach people something. There's been times when people have talked about insurance, or no, it was P&P bonds. Like I did one, it was like P&P, like what's a P&P bond? What's a bid bond? And I got all these responses like, man, I've always heard that, but I never knew what it was. And like, I never would have Googled it, but I'm glad at least I understand what a performance and payment bond is now. And so just stuff like that. I'm just always trying to like share things that, people that may not deal with it all day, every day. You may hear it and never maybe really understand what it is. So I don't know if I answered the question. It's kind of all over the place, and I'm trying to get my branding all on point. And so then for a while, it's like, you're doing your podcast. I'm like, well, it's not a podcast. So then I was like, hell, let's just start a podcast.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, as a reader of your newsletter, it's great, right? It's quick, it doesn't take you an hour to read it, but it's informative, it's entertaining, it's interesting. The memes are pretty spot on usually. But it's helpful, right? And so is Dillon's, frankly. I know I'm going to drown out in the background here when you guys start riffing about each other's newsletters, so I had to get it in first. But it is cool to see, and people like reading it. It's helping to educate the industry, right? Even just little chunks at a time.
And I try to keep it at least halfway lighthearted, because I mean, no one wants to read a white paper or textbook, on Saturday morning when mine comes out. And so I would put memes in there, and I'll put GIFs in based on whatever I'm talking about, just to try to like, I get bored fast. And so, I subscribe to, I don't know, how 20 newsletters I get emailed every week, right? And a lot of them I'll just skim and I'll just see if there's anything fun, because like, it's just a wall of text. And like, man, I don't have time to read a newspaper right now. And like, I don't know, just try to keep it fun.
Yeah, I mean, with newsletters, like it's so I write mine for two reasons. One, to actually practice writing, right? To get my thoughts out in a cohesive manner on a regular basis. And I found the more that I write, the easier it is. So that's why I try to do it daily. And then two is, yeah, I want to educate, but I use it as like it's almost like therapy. Like, here's the shit I want to talk about, and I'm going to talk about it. I don't really care what you think about any of the things that I talk about. And I treat it like that. And I think a lot of people are pretty scared in what they put out. And I don't know about you, but like, I rarely hear back from anybody, but I know that 2,000 plus people, 2,100 people or whatever I'm at now in 3 months of launching this are reading it, right? They get an email because I do it on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is great about emailing the shit out of people. And so like, I know you're reading it. I know it's getting to you. And so like, but I'm not going to hear from you, right? Like, people just read it and they move on. They don't comment, they don't do anything. And that's fine with me.
Yeah.
Right. But I know people are reading it. I don't know what you're and then I do a physical one too. I hear from like, I've heard from a few people that are like, hey, I still want to read this. Like, here's my change of address. They send back, and I'm like, oh, cool. But like, you don't really hear from people. And then it gets to be like, is my message just not getting heard by anybody? Right. And I'd love your take on that for some of the platforms you're using. I haven't used Substack, so I'd be curious on that too.
It's same, spot on. So, I mean, I'm always trying to make it better. And so I don't know, maybe I have a little bit of impatience too, because I'll write it and like I'll get some engagement. And of course, people are going to be more engaged at the beginning, right? They'll comment and like it more. But over time, I'll still see people every because it'll track open rates too. And so like, I'll see like, Dillon, you opened it 5 times this week. You opened it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And like, so there's something good enough to see. I can see that for some reason you open it every day this week. Like, why were you going back to it? So that level of engagement, I can see it's there. But yeah, like a lot of the engagement, at least on the Substack platforms, dropped off. What I found was, the first few people were commenting on it, and I really try to build a community there because it has a comment section, it has this chat function, all these sort of things. And my idea was like, okay, I'm gonna write about something, but I want to hear everybody's take too. Maybe you'll tell me I'm crazy, right? This is my take, but I want to know, like, am I off base, or like, please correct me, right? Like, I always want to know if I'm wrong. And so just kind of have that dialogue. And so I even had a few people like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I need you to kind of go get the conversation started. And some old buddies were like, yeah, of course, I'll do it. And then they didn't do it. Like, you guys suck, man. But what I found is like, so I'll do that, and then I'll go post on LinkedIn, and I'll be like, hey, so newsletter just dropped, and these are like the 5 things we talked about, and go check it out. Here's the link if you want to see it. And I'll get like all the, people want to conversate on that, right? It's like, I love the article this week. Like, oh, I learned about this, this, and this. Like, the meme was hilarious. And I was like, okay, well, that's where the community is. Like, I'm trying to pull them over here, and I've still got their attention over here, but the community's still there, which is actually probably better in the long run, because it gets that algorithm going and more people eyeballs are coming to it versus me operating over in a vacuum on the side where it's not really happening. So I kind of dummied into that. But but yeah, it's the same way where there's a few, fewer diehard fans. You know what I mean? They'll probably they comment every week or they like it every week and those sort of things. But then there's people where, I'll like they'll never say anything, right? But I know they read it 3 times a week almost, right? They open it a bunch. Where I've kind of figured out that when people are sharing it, because like I'll get a thing and it'll be like, Dylan, you opened it 100 times this week. And I'm like, that's very strange. But you opened it from 6 devices. I'm like, that's really strange. And so I realized, like, okay, well, that means you shared it with people. And every time somebody else opened it, like if the three of us were in a email thread, like every time one of us opened it, it was racking up the tally. So
Hmm.
then I've been able to see that too. So it kind of like, okay, at least there was something there that it made it at least shareable where, you forwarded it to some other people.
Yeah, and I mean that's just it. Like, an example that would comes to mind is like how many people ever took a picture of the Wall Street Journal and shared it, right? Like, or whatever newspaper, like pick a
Right.
newspaper, right? Like you would always just tell your buddies that, and like pre-internet, you would just tell your buddies like at the golf course or whoever read Wall Street Journal, right, at a country club or at wherever you met at the bar, like whatever, for that you read it in the paper today, right? And like small town I was in, right, in high school and stuff, it would be like, oh, you made the local paper, right, for whatever. But it was always like here, right? The newspaper company didn't know that like your grandma, went and bought five and passed out the clippings to everybody or whatever. And so I think we have to remember that too, that a lot of this is in word of mouth, and you're not going to necessarily see the stats for it. You'll see, readers or subscribers and you just have to trust that. And this is where like a lot of that goes into and being comfortable in who you are. And what Matt and I talked about on last week's show is, you really just got to be comfortable with who you are. You got to have that voice, and it is what it is. Like, this is who I am through and through. And and this, I actually got this question too, and I think I answered this on last week, but and using like chat GPT and doing all this AI stuff, you lose your own voice and people don't know who you are. So I don't know if you have a take on this too, Matt, but on using all these other tools, and I'm sure you write all your own stuff. So
Yeah, I played with Chat GPT, but it sounds like I can go on LinkedIn right now and tell you like, oh, yep, you're using Chat GPT because it has that voice. It sounds like a robot wrote it, right? And like no
Absolutely.
matter how much you say, write it casually or write it whatever. And like I've told people, I'll send them messages. And I'm like, everyone knows you're not writing this. Like it sounds fake. Um, so the most I've used it for is like just kind of idea generation. Like if you're kind of like writer's block or something, because kind of like you, I started a lot of this with the idea of like I want to write more. I just kind of want to create that habit. And like I'm horrible at journaling. Like I've tried 100 times to like try to create a daily habit of journaling, and like I'm just awful at it. So by creating I give myself I created a weekly deadline for myself. Right, once a week I have to hit publish no matter what. And so it's forced myself to have a deadline, which has forced the habit upon myself. Um, but yeah, so I'll use it for like writer's block, like give me some ideas for construction management principles or whatever, right? And it'll like list me like 100 things. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll write about that. And so it's just stuff I already know about. But whenever you're just like in that, like, I need to think of an idea, like, you never think of an idea.
That's a cool idea for using it. I haven't heard that one yet. We've talked about it before. And it kind of segues into a question I wanted to bring up too, in the use of tech in construction, especially. Not to get away from the newsletter topic that fast, but we're going to get away from it. You mentioned layout robots, and I want to get your take on that, and especially if you've actually seen them or used them in your day job, because we've talked about them a lot. We've talked about the Dusty guys. We've talked about the Boston Dynamics, team and the stuff they're doing, and frankly, I've looked at a couple of them as a side gig, frankly, for bringing them in, but we haven't pulled the trigger. It's not something that we use a lot here in the Midwest, right? It's just
Mhm.
we're still old school by and large in the industry. We're very hard to adopt anything at all, let alone, tech. So you brought up the layout robots. Have you actually used them or seen them?
Not the Dusties, not any of those. We've used a lot of the Trimble. I worked for mechanical and plumbing contract before, so we use the Trimble layouts for our bank, like or in ceiling. We were doing like high rise buildings, like concrete form buildings,
Okay.
and so we would the embeds, and so we
Yep.
go out there and on an open deck, go out there, and it actually was better at night. We could get on the job at nighttime because the guy operated, he had all the points pulled from the BIM model in there. And so he could just say next, and he would shoot a laser beam on the ground, and he could go over there and hammer in his, or put an X or hammer in his banger, whatever we want to do, and hit next, and then point a laser beam and point a laser beam, and all he had to go was just either X all the laser beams. It kind of became problematic if, I don't know if you've done, high rise concrete structures, but those decks are very bouncy. So you got this, I don't know, $10,000, $20,000 piece of equipment sitting here on a bouncing wooden deck, and you're trying to be accurate layout, and then all of a sudden it shifted a 16th of an inch, which 100 foot away, a 16th of an inch translates into, well, now you're way out of the wall. So it had its place, but in some of those, if you're doing it like a dusty robot on a rigid structure that's hopefully not bouncy, it'd be a lot better.
Yeah.
If it's bouncy, you got bigger problems, I guess, than pipe out of the wall. But no, I've seen just enough to really know, like, man, there can be something here. But from where you're at up in the Midwest, I imagine you guys pretty got a pretty solid carpenters union, which may be opposing something like that.
Yeah, we used to.
Yeah.
There's still some unions by and large in our area are they're still around, but they have lost a lot of their stranglehold, a lot of their power. Frankly, and unfortunately, a lot of them went bankrupt. And the carpenters union around here it's still in existence, but it's in shambles. So, we work with union carpenters, we work with non-union, same with all of our trades across the board. So it's not the old days of Detroit union anything by any means.
I got you. I can see, I've seen where unions are. I'm not pro. I see a lot of good stuff. Being in Texas, the mechanical company I worked for was a union contractor, and I see all the benefits of it. And I see all the negatives of it as well. But one thing I have seen and I'm probably going to get massacred for saying this because I'm kind of ignorant on the topic, but I feel like they're slow to adopt technology, right? Like, this is the way we've always done it. They're very traditional. And if you're going to have a robot come in and replace 10 jobs of people actually doing layout on the floor, like, well, that's not a good thing for a union. And so I could see them holding back technology and advances like that.
Yeah, frankly, most of our trades around here, union or not, are pretty tech averse still. Yeah. But not to advertise for them too much, but the dusty robotics, the layout robots, it's a fascinating tool if it actually works like they say it does. Like I said, we looked in it very, very heavily. We were going to pull the trigger about a year ago and get one, and just one thing led to the next. We didn't do it. But if you could actually get all of your trades on board, that's when you could see real value, right? Yeah. If you could have this thing zipping around the job site, zipping around a slab, excuse me, and laying out the walls and the plumbing penetrations and like you mentioned, the ceiling points and do everything all at once, it makes that monthly lease rate that they charge real easy to stomach. What
do they charge to get set up on one?
What's that?
What do they charge to get set up on one?
A lot.
I imagine it's
yeah. It was if 6 figures. Or 5 figures rather. It was, and then it was a lease thing too. You couldn't buy them at the time. Again, this was a year and a half ago. They didn't want to sell them, and they had their reasons. But to make it palatable to be dumping that kind of change every month, you got to be using it constantly. Mm-hmm. Which is what we were looking at, just kind of doing a side portion of our company that would do just that. And one of Dillon and my buddies, Andy Zeller, he's been on the show a couple of times too. He and I got real deep into it, and he was going to kind of help us with it, but it just didn't happen yet. But again, the potential is there, man. And it's cool to see. It's just, I think it's hard as an industry to bring something like that in, because guys, no matter what you say, no matter what the reality is, they're always going to think that little robot's taking somebody's job.
Yeah. I think, you've been hearing about the labor shortage forever, right? And it's real. It really is real. But I think once it gets to a critical point, I think people start more like innovating, right? Humans are innovative. So let's get to the point, like, I literally can't staff my project anymore, or I can't do anymore. They'll start looking like, all right, well, now I'm going to bring in this robot, and he's going to come in on day one and lay it all out, so then I can shuffle my crews differently. And once the whole industry, I think, to your point, I think you got to get like the whole industry, or at least all the trades on one project to be on the same, because if you're not all together on it, it's just going to be a recipe for disaster, I think.
Yeah.
Or at least
And
just inefficiency.
exactly. You got to boost that efficiency by the economies of scale. And
Mm-hmm.
if you got everybody on the same page and you could use it all across your whole scope of work for the project, it'd be great. And it's not, yeah, I mean, it takes the place of a human doing layout, right? That's the point. But it's also saving, in the case of the carpenters, it's saving two guys, however many days crawling around their hands and knees with chalk boxes and tape measures. And, it saves the stress on their back and their knees and everything. And again, if it works, which is the big disclaimer, it cuts down on rework, which is huge. But until I figure out a way to justify the economics, we're going to keep using chalk boxes.
Yeah,
Well,
it'll get there.
Yeah.
The thing too with tech, and I think, for the construction industry that we've been around long enough, and for most of us and for most of the decision makers is, they've been burned by technology one or two times, right? And with adopting technology, like nothing can go wrong on a project. And that's been I think that's kind of the bigger point to look at, where it's not like you're Ford and can put in one feature in these trucks, test it for 3 years, then roll it out in a small increment, then make that camera better, make lane keeping better, make, whatever piece better within your, production line.
Mm-hmm.
So in adopting it, like it has to work perfectly out of the gate. And you can't slow a project down. You can't delay anything. Like training can't be too hard. And so the tech companies and how they've wanted to approach a lot of this stuff is like, and again, this is also from my own mistakes in what I do for, technology and automation is like, hey, here it is. Good luck. Right. And that doesn't work in our world. So the approach of, like, we're going to bring in partners, or we're going to use this technology ourselves on jobs like Canvas has done and some of these others where they are contractor performing the work, that ensures that now they're contractually held to, like, they cannot delay a project. They can't hold anything up. If the job moves, whether that robot's doing it or they got to bring in their own crews to paint and tape, drywall, like that's how it's got to be. And the same thing on like the software side is like, hey, we'll hold your hand through this, we're here for you. And that's just, again, I learned that the hard way. And you've got to really be there for these firms to adopt it. And some of it is going to have a high price tag, but the firms, and you can look at them, HOK built their own 3D modeling software back in the 90s. And they became HOK because of it. McCarthy and Gilbane and a lot of these big contractors that have put into BIM and really developing their tools, it's kind of made them who they are today. They invested in that stuff 10, 15 years ago when they didn't have the names that they do now. And I think with a lot of that, you got to have some testing and proving grounds, but you also have to be able to, implement that in projects where you can to streamline it. Cause again, like your 10-man HVAC shop, dude, they don't have a guy to put and be like, hey, you're our tech guy. We're going to pay you $100,000 a year to like figure this shit out. Like that's not happening. It's like, oh, you're somewhat tech savvy. You figure this out in the 20 hours after work that you're going to work on this thing and still get all your projects done. And like, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we just have to like remember that balance of, and this is for all the tech out there too. One, you have to help these firms through it better, more handholding, provide more, do more for them, help them adopt it. And then two, on these firms, like you guys have to be thinking for all the firms out there, whether you're a contractor, architect, engineer, doesn't really matter. You've got to be thinking about how you can implement technology into your firm. Who's the guy that's going to spearhead it? How are you going to start using it? What are you going to do? What's the firm going to look like in 5 years? Because you're going to need 5 years to ramp it up. I mean, it took most of these firms 5 years to adopt Revit, let alone, all the other stuff that we're talking about.
Good point too. And I think, you got to accept a little bit of failure, right? Because Matt was talking about, you get out there and you're going to get it on your job. You get the whole team bought in. You get the dusty robot out there on the first project. I don't know, maybe you set your coordinates up wrong or whatever, and everything's a foot off, and your whole first floor of your 10-floor buildings over sideways, and then now the whole team's like, well, this sucks. I'm going back to the chalk boxes, like, and then you just burn your dusty, right? Like no, you have to work through the bugs, but I don't think our industry, we're like, no, I know I'll make 10% mistakes doing it by hand, but I'm okay with that. Like, and we're not gonna, just throw the rest out. So I think you have to. I've just seen so many times people start something new and then it doesn't work immediately. They went out to work for, and then they just, the hell with this.
Well, that's just it, man. And if I ran a dusty on my job and it was a foot off or whatever, my carpenters would throw it off the roof, right? Like that'd be the end of the dusty.
You have one chance and you burn that, you're done.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Matt, we're kind of coming up on time, but where can people find you, man?
On LinkedIn a lot. My name is Matt Graves, PMP on LinkedIn. There's a million Matt Graveses, so I think I'm the only one with PMP behind my name. So that's how I kind of differentiate myself on there. The newsletter and podcast and all, you can find it on Substack. The name's constructionyeti.substack.com is kind of the homepage for it. All the archives on there. I kind of went down a rabbit trail of innovation, and so I actually had 2 weeks in a row talking about innovation. And it's kind of funny, as a lot of this podcast, as we've been talking, I'm like, man, I wrote about that. Man, I wrote about that. Man, I wrote about that. It's like, I talked about imposter syndrome one time because, and just like, talking about, man, who am I? And like talking about why do people care what I have to say? Kind of like talking about, I'm going to write this. I don't care what people think. Like, I think I finally got to that point, and I was like, and then, started the podcast. And I'm like, I don't know if it helps one person, then it's worth my time. So
that's it, man. That's the key.
Cool.
Well, Matt, I
any last
appreciate
words?
you coming on, man. I'll let Dillon close it out, but it was a fun conversation, and looking forward to chatting again soon.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for the time.
Matt, super glad to have you on. It's good to meet a fellow, I don't even know author, writer, guy that puts content out,
When I added Construction Yeti to my LinkedIn experience, like, it's like a job, whatever, I was like, what do I call myself? I think I call it founder/creator, but now I'm a founder on LinkedIn. So I get all those people trying to sell me shit. I'm like, that's
Have you ever considered franchising?
yes, if you pay me enough.
No, man, it's good to have you on. It's good that you're promoting the industry, talking about all the things that we do, and really out there. You're out on the front lines talking about stuff, and there's millions of us, but not many that are actually talking about it as we do it. And I think that's super important. So keep doing what you're doing, Matt. We appreciate it. Appreciate having you on. And guys, go follow Matt, subscribe to his newsletter, and we'll talk to you guys next time.